J.T. Crowley is Talking Books. On this show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world. They'll give you their take on the writing process and how to create the secret sauce of page-turning deliciousness. Let's get into that magical mixture of the art and science of creativity. Here's J.T. Crowley, author of The Smart Kids, and your podcast host.
Hello, everyone. I'm J.T. Crowley, and today I have another interesting author for you with another captivating book. John Omar Vieira lives in London in the United Kingdom. His book, Saved From Dementia, was published in 2018. The first part of the book falls under the heading My Life, and when you look at the book, you can clearly see why. The second, but much shorter section, titled My Freedom, again, pretty much reflects John's life from the other side, as if he's been released from some, if not of all, of his inner struggles from his former days. John was born in 1970 in a small village in Guyana in Latin America. He came to the United Kingdom when he was 6 years old. His childhood years were not idyllic due to varying circumstantial factors. His troubles, issues carried on into his adolescence years and early 20s. He was often in trouble with the law, stealing to fund his drug and alcoholic-related addictions. He had periods of homelessness, which exacerbated the whole situation. And so the vicious spiraling cycle continued. John often thought he had mental health issues, but did anybody take him seriously? His family, his friends? Probably not. They probably walked away. But it was the Christian faith of the Christian Science Church that John turned to. That's what saved him. And it was this Christian Science faith that caught his attention, and it was his understanding of the Christian Science, and in particular, a book written by Mary Baker Eddy, Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures. That's the book that caught his imagination and that made him start to follow the Christian Science faith. And that faith has served him well then and today and saved him from dementia. Not dementia as the terms that we all understand it, but dementia what he thinks and understands as his dementia in his life. So let's ask him to join me so that we can get a further insight into this unusual visionary book of his and why he felt compelled to write it. John Vieira, come and join me.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me on the show.
John, it's a huge privilege to have you on the show. Your book is fascinating. It enthralled me. It captured my thoughts. And I found it very eye-opening. But I want to ask you a few questions, if you don't mind, John, so that the listeners and the readers who'll be tuning into this can get an understanding and insight into you, your life, and your book, and why you wrote it. So, John, in the first part of the book, which you head up, My Life, and in many ways, this book is about your life and your Christian understandings. For you, this faith organization saved you from continuing down that path of destruction. So I want to go to the area in your book under number 3, John. A brief personal history where you touch upon your childhood, adolescence, early adult years. You also talk about your highly academic uncle, Zach, the troubles you got into with the police, you shoplifted, you cheated, saw yourself as a little villain, stole to fund your opium habits. Life was not good for you in those days. Would you care to let us into your life here, John, into this book? Would you care to share your formative years and tell us why you wrote this book and why you led that life?
Well, I wrote the book for a wider audience. for something that affects our longevity and mental health, as integral as that, practically affects everybody on the face of the planet. It could be anybody. It just so happened that I wasn't born in the United Kingdom. I was an immigrant child, which had an impact severely, especially life in London. So one had to get used to that, if you like, by naturalization, because of course I entered the UK on the Guyanese citizenship. So it's through the vicissitude within the emphasis of the developments and the exchange, because I hadn't received British status until my late teens. So by then, all the opportunities had gone.
Mm. So life was very challenged for you as a young person, as a child. So that the listeners, readers can get an understanding here. I don't want to trample on, why you went down that route of, the addictions, and the life that you led. Do you think it was a mental illness that you had that formed the basis of that lifestyle at that time of your life, John?
Well, I think it was leading up to mental illness. There was a reputation ahead of me. You've got to understand I was only 6 years old when I arrived into the UK. Mm. And then, of course, I went to school in the whole neighborhood. Nobody called me John, which is my Christian name, and everybody called me Omar. And they immediately thought, well, this, is the filthiest thinking rich Arab or Asian or Indian. And that ostracized me from society for fear of becoming too powerful. And that's what really happened at school, because it happens at school. You're a school leaver. If you don't have social mobility, you're forced into unemployment and drugs and criminal behavior and all those things that have you arrested and taken to prison. And you've got to understand this is also on a Guyanese citizenship. There's no British status. I don't have that at that time. Satisfaction. It is through the vicissitude within naturalization. So that has got much more to do with the, as I say in the book, the Omar angle of incidents, rather than the Christian John.
You talk about, you do. You talk about people addressing you as Omar in the beginning of the book.
Yeah.
And I get the idea, the perception that you were not too keen on that.
Well, no, I wasn't. I mean, that was to satisfy my mother's, between my father and my mother. I mean, he married a Muslim lady. I mean, her family were Muslims and his mother was Indian. So, I mean, that was much more to do with his, well, personal well-being, it was his second wife. Yeah, you know what I mean? He had really had the privilege of a first English wife, and he went on to satisfy his lifestyle.
Of course, your mother had Mongolian ancestry, didn't she?
Yeah, as a Khan.
Yeah,
Miss Khan.
Your mother came from a fascinating background, as far as I can see.
Yeah. And so that's where the Omar sort of nickname arrived. It was what was my middle name, but it was more of a nickname. It was family orientated. It went in the family, But then, of course, they didn't keep it just in the family. The whole community, neighborhood knew. You know what I mean?
I do.
Everybody practically knew Omar. Everybody.
Yeah. I'm intrigued here, John, where did you discover this book about Mary Baker Eddy, which led you into this Christian Science faith?
Well, you see,
Tell me.
my mother was a Muslim, but before she married my father, then she converted to, because my father was a Catholic, yeah, but she converted she converted to Christianity. So up until then, the first few years I arrived into London, we were going to the Christian Church of England. Mm-hmm. That's where my mother used to take us. But then she was introduced to Christian Science by some lady.
That's the link, right?
Yeah, my mother was introduced to Christian Science, and then of course she took us children to Sunday school, and that's how I attended Sunday school in Christian Science. And so it wasn't until I had faced those hardships in society and the community that I went back to the faith. I was taught as a child in the Church of 11th Church of Christ Scientist London, which was at the time in Marble Arch Central London, the church that was built in the 1920s, and it's been since moved to King's Cross. Was sold to Sylvia Young Theatre School, bought it. Sylvia Young bought the church. Now the church is in King's Cross.
I wondered what the link was. I thought, I'm going to ask him, everybody. Now I get it. So that's where you read the book, and that's where you, not only going from your Sunday school, but where you started to read into more of the faith that means so much to you today. Yes. That
was it.
And that was the faith, and that still is the faith that supports you throughout every single day of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Got it. Do you know, when I look at your book, John, further on in the book, I want to go to, from sections 11 to 14, you opted for short essays. Yeah. And I thought, he's gone here from talking about himself, his personal history. He's gone from talking about all sorts of different things. And here we go from sections 11 to 14, short essays. Why did you go for short essays here as opposed from going from like chapters?
Well, because the clarification purposes were to purify and elevate the environment by way of a more coherent, cognitive, cognate way forward for the purposes of illustration. Because at the time I was in dialogue with senior psychiatric consultants. And I needed that clarification. And short essays did it for me.
Right. Because when we look at these short essays, you've put them under 4. You've got section 1, you've got short essays 1, short essays 2, short essays 3, short essays 4.
Yeah.
So let's look at these short essays, John, if that's okay with you. Under your short essays, in short essays 1, you've got what I've determined as topics. You've got 15 topics. That's as far as I can understand. So I'd like to go to 3 of those topics, those viewpoints, so as to give the listeners a flavour of what you're saying, because we can't go into all 15, everybody. We'll be here all day. And we've got lots more to talk about. So can we go to, John, communication, rule of law, and schizoaffective disorder? Can you talk to us about why you put those short essays in around those subjects, those 3 subjects?
Well, communication, because information is a global issue, which is now becoming more and more of a human interface, and the type of creativity that we as human beings possess. And what is it that we call, we're trying to determine the responsiveness and the intervention. So that's why I included communication.
Do you think communication, John, is important in faith, communicating to others.
Yes, it's your personal communion with the Almighty